Welcome to Food Psych, a podcast about intuitive eating, body positivity, and health at every size. I'm your host, Christy Harrison, and I'm a registered dietitian, nutritionist, and certified intuitive eating counselor specializing in weight-inclusive wellness. Join me as I talk with interesting people from all walks of life about their relationships with food.
I remember I was teething, little gums bleeding, cried every evening, it was all about eating. When I became a teen, it was all about beef, and now I'm ready for the world. Trying to sink my teeth in, stacking extra.
Hey there, happy holidays. I hope you're having a good time. If you celebrate Christmas or Hanukkah, you enjoyed yourself yesterday, if you're listening to this the day it comes out, and that you're having a relaxing holiday week. Hopefully you get some time off for self-care. I'm recording this ahead of time because I'm going to be visiting family this week. So hopefully as you listen to this, I will be relaxing as well. But we have a great episode today, actually sort of on the topic of self-care and kindness towards yourself, because my guest is Rebecca Scritchfield, who's a fellow body positive dietitian, and she has a brand new book out called Body Kindness that's all about how to treat your body well and compassionately. And it's informed by intuitive eating and health at every size and all of the great approaches that we talk about here. And the book is gorgeous. You'll hear us talk about it a lot in the episode. But it's available now, so you can order it on Amazon. I think it drops this week. If you're listening to this the day it comes out, it actually drops tomorrow. But I think you can still pre-order it the day before and then regular order it the rest of the week. So a little gift to yourself there for the new year. Grab that book. And I can't wait to talk to Rebecca in just a moment. Before we get into that, we are sponsored today by my intuitive eating online course, which you can find at christyharrison.com/course. And now is a really good time to join the course because right now you're really inundated with pro-diet messages, right? And it can be difficult to hold on to your resolve to not diet and to not get sucked back into disordered eating practices. So the intuitive eating online course is a great way to join a community of people who are on the same journey with you and to get lots of great tools and resources to help you with that journey so you can finally make peace with food in 2017. So my goal is to, throw out the usual New Year's resolutions, right, that people make about wanting to lose weight or quote unquote get healthy, which oftentimes covers for wanting to lose weight, right, or wanting to change your body. So none of that, right, but make 2017 the year of the anti-diet. The year when you finally embrace an anti-diet philosophy and learn how to treat yourself well and with kindness, right? And practice self-care through food and nourishment and nurturing through food and physical activity rather than punishing yourself with those things. Because who wants that, right? It's no fun. So if you want to join the course and join a really cool community of people who are doing this and who are there to support you in this anti-diet practice, plus tons of guidance from me as well throughout the course, you can go to christyharrison.com/course to learn more and sign up today. Another cool resource I want to share is my quiz to assess your relationship with food. So if you've wondered if your relationship with food is healthy or what might be the areas you need to work on, you can take this quiz to get your results delivered instantly via email. And it also includes lots of individualized tips to help you make peace with food wherever you are. So whatever you say in the quiz, there's some tips that come back to you for addressing those particular areas that you need to work on. So you can find the quiz and take it and learn more about your relationship with food at christyharrison.com/quiz. That's christyharrison.com/quiz. And then finally, if you like the podcast and if it's brought you value and helped you in your relationship with food, then please leave a positive rating and review on iTunes. That really helps us out. It helps the podcast climb in the ratings, but it also helps other people get these body positive messages they need to hear, because the more visible we are and the more we come up in search results in iTunes, the more other people can find these body positive messages when they need them. So if they're searching for things like anti-diet or intuitive eating or health at every size or body positivity, or even, something random like elimination diets, right? If they're considering going on some sort of crazy cleanse, my podcast actually comes up in search results for those things because we've addressed those topics now in 80 some odd episodes in the past. And whenever we get more positive ratings, it just brings us us up higher in those search results so that people can find us when they need us most. So if you want to leave a rating and review, go to iTunes either on your computer or the podcast app on your phone. It's that little purple app, and search for Food Psych in the search bar. So for some reason, you can't leave a review just from where you're subscribed to the podcast. Like, you have to search for it in the search bar and then click on the result that comes up under podcasts, and then click on the tab that says ratings and reviews. And that's where you can leave your nice rating and review, little 5-star rating if you like, and tell us what you like about the podcast. So that really helps other people find the body positive message and kind of pays it forward if you've gotten something out of the podcast. So now, without any further ado, let's go talk to Rebecca Scritchfield. I spoke with her via Skype from her home in Washington, D.C. So tell me about your relationship with food growing up.
Ooh, let's jump right in. If I had to describe it in a word, I would say roller coaster. That's actually, I'm on the ride right now. I could see it. So lots of ups and downs in my relationship with food. I would say that, so interestingly, we had WIC when I was a kid. So I would identify as somebody who grew up food insecure. We lived in Northeast Ohio in a suburb of Youngstown, and my parents both worked, but it was just a struggle. Their line of work and having 5 kids, that they did need help getting food on the table. But what's interesting about that is that there wasn't, we definitely didn't go to Whole Foods. And there were a lot of things like fresh produce and stuff that would be years before I kind of got regular and consistent access and exposure to. And I think my parents definitely did the best they could to prepare meals at home, but food was definitely one of the ways that we experienced pleasure and love. We weren't taking vacations every year, right? So when we would drive to the Lake Berlin, and my grandparents had a spot there, just kind of like campers, right? But that would be what we would do for fun. And we'd swim at the lake, and we'd have a cookout, and we would, make our different side dishes and stuff. But that was how we got our vacations and our pleasure and enjoyment. I did not grow up in kind of like a overly nutritious food is health type of household at all. Really, where it ended up hitting me, where I would say kind of like that roller coaster ride, was actually more through dieting and body image. So our family just kind of actually openly identified as like, oh, we're emotional eaters. We're happy and we're sad. And that came out kind of like from my mom. And then we would sometimes diet together, actually. So that's kind of where, I would say there was some transference, like just kind of what was going on in the home environment, but also just being in the culture. Like, I subscribed to 17 and all those other magazines showing, like, it wasn't even until nutrition school where I knew that you needed more than calories a day, or even that number changed for people because of diet culture. But there would be times where my mother I would know that the diet was coming out based on the environment would change. She'd bring out these diet magnets.
To like remind you to diet, basically?
Yeah. Like, they were pigs. Like, so like one of them was like a minute on the lips, a lifetime on the hips.
Oh, no.
It was not good. No. I don't know if you've ever heard of anything called TOPS, taking off pounds sensibly, but it's horrible and there's nothing sensible about it. But this would be one of the things that my mom would do. And she would get into the idea of the competition of it. When she won like the extra toilet paper because she lost the most weight, she'd come home and be like, yay, we have toilet paper. So it was just a roller coaster ride. But this was kind of the environment. And eventually I got the message that food and how you act around food was something to fear. So this idea of that you needed to be good around food, and that if you weren't a good girl around food, that you might gain too much weight. And so it became this, my body presented like a happy, healthy, growing teenager, but I could actually restrict out of fear of excessive weight gain, and it wouldn't necessarily show up on my body. And I think that was very dangerous for me because I was able to isolate and hide just very mean thoughts and disordered behaviors. I would say I was very lucky in my closest friends, even though they couldn't really see what was going on, they would also be like, come on, we're going to Burger King, And so it was like just when I actually really needed kind of a good meal, we would go and get, Burger King or pizza. And I really do think that having that in my life helped me stay at least better nourished, right?
Mm-hmm.
And really prevented potential downward spiral. I never developed what I would say is a diagnosable eating disorder, but I do, now that we have got terms like orthorexia coming out, identify with that's probably along the lines of what it could have turned into. But just kind of a classic uncomfortable teen in a changing body that wants to be liked and loved and accepted, and really believing that my value was in my appearance. And so a lot of comparison to my friends, and if my legs were bigger, I felt I needed to do something about it. So not the healthiest thing.
Yeah, no, it really strikes me how often people's body insecurities ramp up in the teenage years, around puberty.
Yeah.
I mean, we've spoken about it on this podcast before about how it really would be a public service for someone to teach parents to recognize that and to say to their kids, you're probably going to gain some weight, and that's a necessary part of going through puberty, and it's not something to fear, and it's not something you should try to manage or control. Your body will sort itself out. Spread that message far and wide, rather than this alternative that we're seeing these days, which is doctors fear-mongering and passing that message on to kids and also to their parents. Oh my God, your child has gained weight. It's a national scandal. You have to do something.
Right. Well, I don't even think most doctors know, or if they might have learned about it in school, they're forgetting the idea that pre-puberty, over a year of pre-puberty, there's a softness to bodies, naturally. And as you point out, it evens out. But I do, in my counseling practice, I have a number of the doctors will refer kids to me in the area. I've did my due diligence with the marketing, like send them to me if you have any concerns. And it is a family-based conversation where absolutely we have this conversation about, this is about loving and respecting your body exactly as it is now. Even if you're coming here saying, I want to give up soda and I want to make these changes, that you don't begin to really make true progress in your well-being until you accept yourself first, exactly as you are, 100% inside and out. And yeah, anything we could do to make that the global accepted belief, we'd have a lot healthier people out there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it really starts with the parents too, because I think if someone is struggling, like it sounds like your mom was, with her own weight and her own body image, it's impossible not to pass that on to your kids.
Yeah. Well, we're sponges and we're going to see it. And it honestly, between that and the magazines, that's what I thought being healthy was, so I'm rewarding myself like, I'm just healthy, right? And it took years for me to figure out that was actually a very twisted way of thinking and living, and something that I deeply regret. I do try to see the optimistic side, that it shaped who I am, and that I have this opportunity as a mom now to what I call break the chain and kind of shift things around. And it's come out in my work. I do see the benefit of whatever type of traumatic experiences I had being younger. But I do think that there's all types of challenges that can present to ourselves anyway, that we should be actively looking at ways to grow just a diverse group of people who are body positive, right? I just see so many connections between not accepting the idea of size diversity, or that, genetics, diversity in genetics, with not only just individual self-esteem and isolation and even outside of eating disorders, but just in self-esteem, self-worth, like people having a meaningful life because you're not engaging with other things because you're too preoccupied about the flaws that you have. And then you could look at that externally, right? The genetically thin kids that may not be open and accepting to kids in larger bodies. And we see bullying, which harms not only mental health, but even to the point where we've seen that kids are at higher risk for developing eating disorders and suicide. That's some serious serious stuff that we have got to in the medical model of treating and helping people be healthy, understand that all this judgment on appearance is unhelpful across the spectrum, across age groups, and we've got to do better. We've got to know better. We've got to do better by our culture and our society.
That's so well said. And it's absolutely true. Like, it's a social justice movement. It's not just an individual problem or a health problem. It's really something that affects people on a systemic level, right? In a social justice level. Like, if we are discriminating against people for being in larger bodies, and we do know from the research that weight stigma leads to or is associated with worse health outcomes than if people didn't experience that stigma. And so what are we doing if we're stigmatizing people in the name of health? A, it's not working, and B, it's morally reprehensible in my mind.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
I mean, I think people don't realize that moral component of it when they're doing it, because it hasn't become, and of course, in our society, we have become so much more accepting and tolerant of diversity, but we can see that there are strains of American culture that are still not accepting, right? And that it's sort of terrifyingly evident now that there's still so much racism, overt racism in this country, and gender oppression and anti-gay and anti-trans bullying and all of that. But I think those of us who are more woke to that stuff and would consider ourselves advocates for acceptance of all diverse identities that people share, we have to include body size in that. And I think so many people who are really social justice advocates don't necessarily see that immediately. So I think that that's a huge piece of the puzzle, is getting the conversation about body size into conversations about social justice too.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. And, we've got to somehow get people to understand that there is too much of an emphasis on individual blame for our appearance, for being in a larger body. That is everywhere. It's the immediate judgment that's personal responsibility, that's individual choices. And that's false. I mean, that is a total myth. I mean, I don't like to admit to clients what percentage of behavior change actually influences their health risk, because it's effective. It matters. It's not 1%, but I think it's something like 18% of your behaviors and your choices can actually influence disease risk. So that I don't even necessarily want to admit that, because I want people to take good care of themselves and feel good, even if part of that is, and I'm preventing disease, right? But it's true. Genetics having such a factor, socioeconomic status, something that I've lived through, right? I get that, but we instantly, even for people we love, our own family, we will instantly, and even if we remember one or multiple occasions or just have seen people go on and off diets, we automatically blame the person. And this, I cannot wrap my head around how big of an issue it is. And if the more we say, look, genetics has a major factor, and we know because we do counseling and with growth charts and stuff, you have a growth chart from 2 to 18, right? You have kids that start high and stay high. That is just their genetics. And, I've heard stories of doctors telling an 18-month-old, well, that this kid's needs a diet. And I bet, this wasn't my client, but this was a friend. And I got to bet that in that scenario, that the doctor, I hope this isn't true, but where my gut went to is the doctor looked at mom or dad and saw a larger body and saw an 18-month-old that wasn't even on their growth chart for 2 yet, and just thought, better start scaring them now. Like, that reprehensible. It's horrible. But we've got to understand that genetics plays a major factor in socioeconomic status, as far as access and all these other issues. And then even the gut microbiome, which we are barely scratching the surface now of okay, so the gut microbes can increase cravings for certain foods and hormones and that. And so it's that could be potentially triggering somebody to be outside of a weight that would be genetically stable for them. But it's, again, not necessarily stuff that they did individually. And yes, you could change patterns to your food choices that might impact your gut microbiome, but we don't know enough about all of that stuff to really say. And even all these things that you can't control in your microbiome, like changes that happen in pregnancy when you're in utero. How could you have controlled that? Or vaginal or C-section birth. You couldn't control that.
Or having to go on antibiotics because you have some kind of infection and you're going to die if you don't get the antibiotics, and they might alter your microbiome, but better that than die, right?
Exactly. So yeah, I think that the whole point in that part of that conversation is that I really do try to help people reduce this judgment, whether it's for self or others, because the blame and the shame and the judgment is really setting everything back when it comes to body positivity, health at every size and true health and well-being. If we really care about helping people get healthy, health is mind and body. It is not appearance. It's not weight. It is much bigger picture and much more complicated than did you go to the gym today? Why not?
Oh God, I know that. Yeah, that's sort of emphasis on individual responsibility, where I think people really do have it, not through any fault of their own, but how we're sold this bill of goods on the effect individual responsibility can have on our health. We sort of feel like, oh, well, I didn't do this or this, so that's why I'm having all these health problems, or I have to do what I'm doing harder or cut out more foods because clearly this isn't working because I'm having issues. And so much of it is outside our control. That 18%, like you said, is all we really have influence over, which I think people sometimes have it reversed, thinking we have control of 75 or 80% of it or whatever, right? Or more, I think some people really believe they have control over 100% of their health, which just is not true at all. And then also, I think because we believe this, then sometimes we'll get into that loop of thinking oh, if I just do more of this thing that I think is supposed to be helping me, if I just do more restriction or more elimination of foods or more exercise, that's what's going to help. And then we dig ourselves deeper and deeper into that hole because actually it's too much of those things already. And that's what's causing the problem.
Yes, no, absolutely. And it is a delicate balance, right? When you think about it, because people do have an agency over their choices, right? And you want to positively empower. If someone is interested in improving their well-being and their habits, you want to help them with the mindset and the tools, and there's good stuff there. But I think where it gets twisted is when there's expectations where that this will have a direct and immediate impact in the way my appearance, in changing my appearance. And, if I don't measure up, then what happens? The inner thought bully just is going to let you have it, right? And that is where it becomes a shame, because if the only reason you're working on changes in your life, food choices, exercise, sleep, stress, whatever, the only reason is to manipulate your appearance, you're bound to be disappointed because we just don't control that the way we think we do.
Yes, very well said. I feel like digging underneath the reasons people are so attached to appearance is one of those keys to changing it, because I think we are all, again, sold this idea that our appearance has so much bearing on our success, right? Our ability to find love, our ability to find happiness, our ability to be accepted. And so if we can help people clarify that and see oh, this is what I'm looking for when I put all this emphasis on my appearance. Because I really think that most people who get sort of unduly obsessed with appearance aren't superficial people at all. They actually have so much more depth and so much more that they want out of life. But there's this kind of disconnect around what's going to bring that to them. And they think it's going to be achieved through appearance.
Yeah. I mean, for me, it was I was trying to fit in. So growing up, I was comparing myself to, I was on the dance team, right? So, doing my kicks at the basketball games with everybody else, but I would compare my thighs to someone else's thighs. And well, this is why you didn't get a date for Sadie Hawkins. your thighs. I mean, it makes no sense now. And I hope my kids never say this bad stuff in their head. But that was my real experience, was how could I blame my body for a life disappointment, I guess. Or it was always this thing of how you're inadequate. And so I do think, I don't believe for a second it's a vanity as much as it's wanting love and acceptance and to feel like you fit in and everything's going to be okay, because there is this standard for this is who gets the friends, this is who gets the dates, this is who is worthy, and this is who's not.
And that's what we're shown all the time in media. That's the image that gets portrayed. Like, can you imagine if things were shown differently, if we had role models of larger bodied people and people in all different shapes finding love and happiness? And like, that was the media we consumed. The 67% of American women are considered plus size. So it's like, what if we saw the 67% getting what they wanted, getting success, getting love? I feel like that would really shift the idea, because we aren't born with this idea like we have to look perfect to get love. That is downloaded to us from our culture and from our parents as members of the culture and from family friends and peers at school and all of that. We're all just kind of swimming in the same pool. But if we could change the culture radically, I think we could really change people's experiences and outcomes with this stuff.
Yeah. And it's, I often wonder, like, okay, how long is it going to take to change culture? And I think a really long time, which part of it, it doesn't mean we stop, we unite, we resist, and absolutely, because it has to change. But I also often think about it in the sense of agency for what can I control? What can I, for lack of a better word, just give a big middle finger to and just say, no, I'm not doing this. I reject that. In a book I loved, Jess Baker and Things No One Will Tell Fat Girls, I loved her, like, fat girls do it all. And she had these challenges. I was like, yes, I recommended that book to so many clients, and to do the different things. I just think there's so much power in your choices, and that why wait for all the things that need to change in diet culture to fully change before living the best kind of life that fits you. And yeah, we do that work, but at the same time, the courage to just reject and say, I've got to try to make some choices that I think work for me within this toxic soup of diet culture, and try to kind of find the best space possible in here. And a lot of it has to do with setting boundaries of what you will and won't let kind of in your purview. So whether it's canceling those magazine subscriptions and all those other things that you could do to try to say, let me welcome in body positivity. You're not going to shield yourself 100%, but you can at least kind of find some friends and allies and sort of surround yourself with more goodness than harm. And I think that's a very important step. It was an important step for me, an important step for anybody who's looking for just more positivity and encouragement around self-acceptance and self-love.
Absolutely. I think that's so important, is like, we are the gatekeepers of our own consumption. We can, of our own media consumption, I should say. Like, we can choose what we allow into our minds and hearts, right? To a large extent. Obviously, there's moments when we'll just be caught off guard by something we didn't expect to be in a show we're watching or whatever. But we do have agency. And I think that's the kind of behavior change that can really be effective, is like surrounding yourself with body positive content and allies and people who can support you, and learning to accept yourself and going through that hard process, which, like, for me, I know took years and took a ton of therapy. So I know it's not easy or cheap, but if you can commit to that and do whatever you can afford, whatever you can make time for, to learn self-acceptance and self-love, that's the kind of behavior change that really is effective, because you're not going to get much mileage out of cutting unnecessary things out of your diet. In fact, you're probably going to dig yourself further into this hole of self-loathing and shame. But if you can put that energy and that time into becoming more accepting of your body and learning to accept yourself in all of your various facets, I think that is what's going to lead you to better health overall, over the long term.
Yeah, absolutely. And something else that I find clients tend to struggle with is that sort of, oh, just shut up and love yourself. Like it doesn't really feel good. And so I encourage, okay, that's the direction where we're going, and just true authenticity, right? So overall, I want to be the kind of person who loves herself and treats herself like she loves herself, treats herself like she would a friend, say, and that's this long-term vision. But in the present moment, in this exact state moment right now, I'm not feeling like I love myself in that moment, and just even accept that feeling as being okay. But then what action would you take? What choice would you make? What would you do if you were in that state, like the kind of person who loves herself, and use that as a guide, because it's going to put you on a path to making choices that feel like self-acceptance and self-love, even when you don't feel capable, like you're the expert in it, right? Like you're in kindergarten and you got to need to work your way through high school, but that choice and that step and that action was very meaningful for your progress.
Yeah, that's a great tip, because it doesn't end really. I think as I've found in my own journey, like I've gotten to a place of so much more self-acceptance and self-love than I ever imagined 10 years ago. But there's still work to be done. There's still moments I catch myself and I'm like, ooh, I'm really overworking and I'm feeling kind of like dazed right now. And I need to really take a break and go for a walk. And I'm not letting myself do that. So in certain moments, I'm like, oh, I'm not really being kind to myself. But I think a huge difference is that 10 years ago, I would have been like, shit, I'm not being kind to myself. I'm so terrible. I'm horrible at this self-compassion thing. I'm never going to get it, which
you suck,
which is totally something I hear from a lot of my clients, right? Because when we're in that self-critical place, of course, we just pile on to ourselves with more self-criticism, even when we're trying to change. But ultimately, I think the biggest key to recovery and really learning to do the self-acceptance thing long-term is to say like, okay, adding on more self-criticism is really not going to help. And the only way to start getting out of this hole is to take small steps to be kinder to yourself wherever you are right now. So that might be being like, oh crap, I'm not being kind to myself. Okay, all right, I can see that and I can accept it. And now maybe what's something else I can do to start being kinder right in this moment, and like not waste any more time beating yourself up.
Yes. And seeing it more as an observation, almost like there's this part of you that just is watching, what's happening and can just truly observe it, whether it's like a scientist is observing, a behavior or something that is unbiased and non-judgmental, trying to cultivate that voice that's just noticing, wow, this is happening. I know I had a cold and I was super busy with deadlines right before the holidays. And I'm kind of like, I like to move my body for different, I take rest days. It's not that, but you know what I mean? Like, like sometimes movement for me is folding laundry and that's enough of a workout. But then I like to do a good yoga class or, I like to go on a run, but it's just part of my identity to get movement regularly. And when I first caught this cold that was going around in the preschool and everything, it was definitely like, you need rest and you could do your work stuff and this is great. And that was definitely self-care. And then as the days got on and I started getting better from my cold, oh, is today going to be the workout day? And I would get this shift of, well, you're still, you're not 100%. It's okay to take another rest day and you have deadlines. It's just not happening. It doesn't mean you're not an exerciser. So there was more observing and self-compassion, but it's constant effort to kind of make those, like kind of have that gentle, hey, it's going to be okay. And then also that same voice can say, all right, so we've had the cold 7 days, we're on the up and up. And yes, work is continuing to take up your time, but what can we do today? Could we try something? And so I really think it is a combination of both, like it depends on what's going on. Sometimes being good to yourself is taking a lot more rest than you normally would because you would be happier getting the work done and healing your body, But then after a while, kind of coming back into and say, it looks like work is going to be picking at you for a while here. Maybe we need to set a boundary around that work and do something, some type of gentle movement or some sort of action that shows that you really do care about moving your body again. And that could be literally 5 minutes of gentle yoga or a 30-minute walk, or it doesn't matter. It's not the effort, it's the action that you brought back that just kind of tells yourself, see, I'm still here to take care of you.
Right. I love that. And yeah, giving yourself what you want and need in that moment too, which could be just a little stretch or a walk around the block or whatever. When you said folding laundry, I totally identified with that too. Like sometimes my daily chores end up being the movement I get that day, and it's like, well, I needed to do that. And I have limited time and energy that I can expend moving. So that's a good way to sort of move around and get stuff done at the same time,
Exactly.
Yeah. So take us back then to the moment when it started to become clear to you that you were relating to food in your body in a sort of disordered way.
I would say that I went through the rest of high school, college. I just feel like being away from home, I was in a sorority. So, I'm definitely one who was like influenced by other people. But like in our sorority, we had ice cream troughs. And I mean, like literally the gutters of houses, we would line and we'd put all the toppings in and that would be one of our parties, just eating out of it.
So funny.
So, yeah, it was great. Alpha Chi Omega, Alpha. So it wasn't, and it's interesting too, because the other thing in college, I wasn't involved in sports and I actually took a gym class for credit. And I was really highly motivated and influenced by my teacher there who really taught this positive mindset about taking care of your body. And I ended up sticking with him. So I don't know, I was probably more than any gym membership paying college credit, but what I wanted to help bring more movement to the campus. So I actually was able to get funding and start this fitness program, train some aerobics instructors, and like my chemistry professor did my workout class and stuff. And I wasn't in there like, come on, we got to get skinny, everybody. So there had to have been some shifts happening because of all that, but there was no classic like rock bottom for me personally intervention for me. And truthfully, even when I went into the field of nutrition, I was actually somebody who I would identify now as like part of the problem and a major offender because I thought it was helping people and I was just doing all the diet crap. I mean, I was doing stuff before the Fitbit. It was like the precursor that company that Fitbit ended up buying eventually. I was slapping the monitoring devices on and like, come on, I'm going to motivate you, right? And I loved Biggest Loser. It was just, I'm making fun of myself now, and hopefully that's what comes across because it was a complete shift for me. It did not happen overnight, but certainly I feel like I was still disguising all these things as health, just being part of diet culture. And what I found is that there were kind of two things that kind of really woke me up. One was frankly, losing clients and like realizing that they would keep stuff from me that they felt guilty about. Cause I didn't even know what therapeutic alliance even was. I was like, I'm helping you, right? And so just losing clients and watching the relationship fizzle and truthfully realizing that, okay, now I'm talking to a busy CEO about cutting the work cupcake in half. Like, this isn't right. Like, this doesn't feel right. So I had to be honest with myself that what I was seeing in my practice was, I didn't know the term size diversity, but that's what I was seeing. And I didn't know diet culture. And that I was seeing people who had disordered eating and who were coming to me to get healthy. And I was just giving them the same tired prescription that clearly didn't work. And so that was kind of like a nudge. And then my sort of big big slap in the face had to do when my mom had a heart attack. She was driving, so she could have died or hurt other people. And thankfully, she did get medical attention. She was treated in the hospital. But when she needed to have open heart surgery, I actually went out there to visit, and I discovered that she was sneak eating food. And I discovered candy wrappers, and I'm a dietitian, right? And I'm like, what is this? And literally, I mean, it was before binge eating disorder had a name. And I'm looking up and I'm seeing like bulimia, and I'm like, no, that's not her. But I would see binge eating, and I really questioned. I was like, could dieting have been what led to her sort of down and up, not even just weight, but behaviors, mindset, the whole thing? She never found a kind of a stable, happy, this feels good to me. And when I started researching about diets, and I found intuitive eating, and I immediately signed up for Evelyn Tribole and any training I could get from her and reading her book. And then I found Marsha Hudnall. She taught me about health at every size, and I immediately joined ASDA. I was a participant expert at Green Mountain. So I went through the program, and that was very helpful for me. I'm so grateful for all these types of things that kind of presented themselves to me, and I could figure out, because I was really like, oh my God, how am I going to be a dietitian where there's diet in the name and suddenly say, I don't do diets, everybody. I mean, I saw the business dry up and everything. I was so afraid. And actually it doubled in the first year. I was busier than ever. And the basic sentiment was, I do not know what to do, but I can't do another chicken breast and spinach diet again. Like I need something. And that I think just kind of was my, okay, this is it. Now move forward in this direction, transition. But so it wasn't sort of one big event. It was lots of little things and a mixture of big things, but that were, I needed to be open to say, maybe I've made some mistakes. Maybe I don't have it right. And maybe I need to figure out what helping people truly be healthy looks like, because it wasn't what we were taught in nutrition school.
I know. And so many of us go through that who are trained in a traditional dietetics model, right? Like we don't get exposure to health at every size. We don't get exposure to intuitive eating. And many of us are attracted to the profession because we have our own issues with food. Like that's, I mean, it's pretty natural, of course, that so many dietitians would go into it because we're trying to work something out for ourselves. So when we're presented with this like calories in, calories out, just cut calories and increase exercise and you'll lose weight. It's very seductive and it's very sort of in line with what we already have been taught by diet culture. But then, there's often those moments where you're sort of like, shit, this doesn't work. Like, what am I doing here? I definitely identify with that. I mean, I had my own eating disorder as well, and then long period of disordered eating, which is what drove me to go back to school to become a dietitian. And when I first started out, I was telling people how they could cut this and that, and cutting the cupcake in half or taking less of something, like just deprivation. I was feeding their deprivation.
So when you were in school, were you like me and you were still drinking the Kool-Aid?
Oh yeah, big time. There are a few moments where I questioned it. Like a couple of things happened in school, one of which was, as I've spoken about on the podcast before, but we had like a diet assessment and planning class where I had to weigh we had to weigh ourselves in front of the whole class, and like this like group sort of experience where we'd go around to different stations, take our weight, take our height, calculate what our ideal body weight was supposed to be. There were calipers involved. It was like this very clinical thing that was sort of like, okay, here's how you calculate someone's ideal body weight and do it on yourself. And so I calculated what my quote ideal body weight was supposed to be. And initially it looked like it was supposed to be like the lowest weight in my eating disorder. And I recognized that number and I was like, oh my God. And I just had this moment of like, am I doing it wrong? Have I been completely just messing up for the last couple of years? Because I had been, weight restored for a few years at that point. And I was like, am I just missing the boat here? Is there something going on? So I kind of wrestled with that for a few days. And then I ultimately came to the conclusion of like, that is complete bullshit, because if I were to do the only way I've ever been that weight in my adult life was having these terribly disordered behaviors that I had learned in school, I was not eating enough. I was exercising too much, like at least sort of picked that up, even from the emphasis on calories. I was still like, oh, I wasn't eating enough calories. And if that was the only way I could have, quote, achieved that weight that was supposed to be ideal for me, then that just wasn't healthy. So I kind of had like a little mini health at every size epiphany. And that led me to get rid of my scale, delete my calorie tracker, like kind of just be like, screw it. Let me just see what my body does, because I think I'm sort of learning some basics about good nutrition and I think I'm following them. So let's just see where this goes. And I bought the book Intuitive Eating because I was exposed to it somewhere along the way in my coursework. And again, I don't really know where. I think it was just one of those random little moments. But even in the midst of that, right, even having these sort of major epiphanies about my own size and why I needed to give up trying to control it, I was still drinking the Kool-Aid on helping other people control their size, quote unquote, helping them, right? Because like I thought that's how we were supposed to help. And I think there was this whole sort of thin privilege or bias towards like, people at the lower end of the weight spectrum. Cause I was like, okay, in my own life, I could sort of rationalize that I was at a quote normal BMI range and that I had been unhealthy before. And so it was okay for me to give up tracking and over exercising and all of that. But for people in larger bodies, like they still had a problem and they still needed to do all that stuff to lose weight. So I didn't quite apply it completely, It wasn't until much later that I started working with eating disorders. And that's when I was like, oh, right. This is true for everybody. This is not just about people in, quote, normal size bodies. And in fact, there is size diversity that we have to accept and celebrate and all of that. So I finally kind of reached that conclusion once I was already working in the field. But it was a long and winding road.
Yeah, I bet. So there's a natural size diversity, and I do find it compelling, some of the research that we're seeing that shows that your bodies are better off never dieting at all, and that there's data that shows if you do a diet, your BMI is likely to increase over 2, even higher. So it is something, there are people who were just born fat, gonna trend high on the curve. And there is nothing unhealthy about size, and that's the whole judgment thing and societal problem we have. And then it's what did a person do because they were told their body was a problem that may have created some metabolic challenges and everything like that. But to me, it's like whenever you can get to a point of let me work with the body I have right now. It's not like you can go back and before all the diets. I mean, it would be great if we could, but we can't. So it's more about what do we do? What do we do going forward? So I believe that there are healthy people who are fat who have never dieted, and that's amazing, but I think there is also people who have dieted who have likely just not helped themselves, right? So dieting did not lead to some sustainable, happy, healthy habits. And it did not lead to kind of just the body evening out at a place that was right for them. And so it just goes back to, well, why are we prescribing malnourishment and calorie restriction to anybody of any size? It makes no sense. And it's a big beef I have with the training that we get in the medical model. Saying obesity is a disease and pathologizing obesity, I think is just continues to perpetuate stigma. And I don't see how it's helpful, because it's really not the weight and the appearance. It's the best you can with mind, body health without going to extremes and enjoying your life, enjoying your life.
Yes, I know, because we deprive people of so much enjoyment and pleasure when we tell them you've got to cut this and that, and you can't do these things you loved anymore, and you have to like spend all your free time at the gym. What are we doing? And like you said, we're prescribing to one set of people something that we would consider malnourishment or an eating disorder in another set of people. So why, like, that's not okay. That's not accurate. It's not an accurate understanding of the way bodies work. Really, what's true is that what's good for everyone is intuitive eating and joyful movement and health at every size, right? So that's what we need to focus on.
Yeah. And adequate mental health care if needed, right? Everything is siloed. Why are we not helping the whole person and just truly having a wellness culture that, so what I'm struggling around the word like prevention is what I want to say, but what I really mean is like truly a wellness culture that doesn't overwork, that is family friendly. So we have healthy boundaries around our time that encourage time to get and find movement that is enjoyable. And there's a lot of missing pieces that set up those feels good for me lifelong habits that everybody deserves who cares about their health, right? Because we also got to acknowledge that the healthism side of it, not everybody needs to make health the most important thing in their life, but as health practitioners, right? Like for those who do, who are coming to get our support as dietitians, we need to understand how you help people change. And we don't get that really. I mean, maybe tiny bit of motivational interviewing, but we definitely don't get what we really need. And I don't know how it's solved except for just continued advocacy and raising our voices. And I think enough, bringing in new dietitians and just at any stage in your career, just saying, being open like you were, and maybe there is something else out there, and being open to explore and being willing to make mistakes, because nobody makes this transition to being respectful of all bodies and leaving behind everything that you did that was dieting. Nobody makes it perfectly overnight, easily. It's messy.
It is. It's so messy. There's like 2 steps forward, 1 step back, or a few steps sideways, or, circling, looping back and kind of doing it again. So yeah, I have a lot of dietitians who listen to the podcast, and I'll get emails from people who are sort of reckoning with this. Like, oh my God, I just realized that what I've been doing isn't helping people, and I feel so guilty and so bad. And I so empathize with that, because I definitely experienced that myself when I realized like, oh my God, what I've been doing has been part of the problem. But I think it's also important to have compassion for yourself and to just realize that, we do all go through this because of the way our training is structured. Like, we don't have to do this reckoning before we start working with people, when we're still training, because it's not part of the curriculum. So we don't really get exposed to it until a lot of self-study usually, or working in the field with people who do understand this stuff.
Yeah. I've encountered some students like in different private Facebook groups and stuff for health at every size. And I feel for them. That's kind of earlier when we were talking about, I was like, I'm kind of grateful that I could just like breeze on by being like, yeah, all this stuff is great, because I feel for them. And I have had dietetic interns, and they've said, this is my assignment. How can I make it health at every size? And I was like, oh, we're going to do this, this, and that. And get that approved. And a lot of time professors would approve things, because they did not feel right interning with me. They knew better. If they did not feel right just spieling out the typical drivel of calorie counting, whatever. But I do empathize with future dietitians who are in the coursework, and you're trying to get a good grade because you're trying to get an internship, which is hard to do. And you're trying to learn and support health at every size. And so you're answering questions that are completely against what you deeply believe. And I would just say, keep going in the direction where you feel pulled, because you are correct, and rely on the other professionals for support and encouragement, and see how you can weave in health at every size and the science and the data into your coursework the best you can. But you do have to become a dietitian So yeah, you have to do what you're going to have to do to get the RD and then make a huge difference.
Right. You got to jump through the hoops that they set out for you.
Exactly.
And those hoops are pretty antithetical to health at every size in a lot of cases. But you're right. Like you can sort of shoehorn it in where it works, right? Like bring in that data wherever possible. And then also there's a movement afoot to start bringing health at every size into the dietetic curriculum, which I think is really cool. I don't know when this podcast comes out if the petition will still be open or active, but there's a petition going around that I'll link to in the show notes for this episode that dietitians or dietetic interns can sign that goes to the Commission on Dietetic Registration, saying that we need to have health at every size principles taught in our curriculum and outlining why that's so important. So I think that's a cool potential change that, maybe is on the horizon a few years or decades down the line. I don't know. But if, everybody listening to this signs it, maybe we'll get that much closer.
Yeah, no, I agree. I signed the petition, and I'll also just throw in there the reference for Dietitians for Body Confidence. And I'll give you that link too, but it's a free email every other month. You just sign up. There's research on the website. And the idea there is that's exactly what we're hoping to do, is just be a resource for dietitians and future dietitians to just get access to the research kind of in one place that you might not necessarily see everywhere, get some fun social media memes to share out there, and kind of part of that building this environment that's more positive and supportive is we're hoping to kind of keep growing that community, because the more voices we have and the more petition signatures we get and the more we stand up and resist and say, hey, this shit ain't right, like over and over and over again, I do believe that we will get action and change. And that's what people deserve. If you went into nutrition to help people, they deserve the best of you to help them, which is not judgmental and it's truly helping give them a better life.
Yeah, that's such a good reminder, because we all go into these helping professions wanting to help. We want to do good. We want to not do harm. And I think it's sort of scary to realize that something we were doing is actually doing harm, and that we might have to change course, which, like you said, you were afraid of losing business. I know that was an issue for me too, when I started to get really specific about the health at every size focus and take any mention of weight management out of the equation. But it was the same thing for me. My business doubled or tripled. There is a market for this stuff. And it's actually, I think you can sort of trust, if anyone's making this transition, that it will happen. The people will come, because there are so many people at this point who've gone through hundreds of diets or dozens of diets and realize that it doesn't work and need a better way.
Yeah.
There is help out there. And I want to talk about your book, because I feel like that is a super helpful resource for anyone listening who wants to start making that transition. Just the concept of body kindness, I think, is so cool. That's the title of the book, Body Kindness. And I love that word because, as you were saying before, saying body love and oh, just love your body already, shut up and love your body sort of doesn't really work. That's not a step you can easily take if you've been in a place of hating your body. But I think body kindness is a helpful, just a way to remind yourself to be compassionate and be kind. And I think we all are doing the best we can, and we all want to be kind. So when you sort of remind yourself that you deserve that too, and that your body deserves kindness, I think it can be helpful in making steps to change.
Well, thank you very much.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about the book and what it's about and what people can expect from it.
Well, I think it's a blueprint, really. It's not, there's guidance in there, but you're not going to find super prescriptive rules of do this, don't do that. And it's not anything like a cookbook, full of recipes or anything like that. It's much more about helping guide you through becoming the kind of person that you want to be. And so what I mean by that is I start out, part one is all about your choices, and that's called What You Do. And it's really to help you understand how our brains work, how we make choices, how things like FOMO and following the herd can bite us because we're actually not thinking about what we really want. We're thinking about that fitting in part. And then I also have chapters after that separated out into simple themes. It's food, fitness, sleep. So you can kind of dip in and say you're most interested to hear what body kindness and food look like. You could kind of go through that chapter. Something that's very special to me about the book overall is this idea of spiraling up.
Mm-hmm.
And it's throughout the book in the form of reflections and also exercises and activities that you could do on your own or with friends and even do in a book club. But it's this idea of how important our emotions are and how they can impact our choices. And sometimes negative emotions can lead to poor choices. And it's almost in this kind of downward spiral sense. So it's not, oh, I can't wait to enjoy cookies with permission. It's much more like, I'm tired and somebody yelled at me at work and I'm going to escape and avoid this pain by eating emotionally. There's all ways you can imagine this idea of downward spirals, but visually you imagine that you become more closed off to the world, maybe a little bit more isolated to yourself. And you could experience a downward spiral, like a day is like a downward spiral, or a moment of a day, you notice a downward spiral. But the value is when you notice just kind of something's not right, that you can come in, mindfully be aware that, you know, your mood is off, something's impacting you. And it's not to force fake happiness. No. But when you're aware that that negative emotion is there for a purpose, it's there to tell me something, you can make a decision that maybe it doesn't drive this euphoric upward spiral, but it prevents the downward spiral from going further and maybe neutralizes it. And then maybe the next choice or the next gentle, kind thought you had for yourself boosts a little bit more. So it's this overall direction, when you think of an upward spiral, that we want to be open people and have open relationships. And it, so, you know, I kind of envision that like the open part of the spiral is where we're kind of at our ideal joy and satisfaction and things are going well. And that's really where we have kind of that good life that we're looking for. And when we're going in the direction of the downward spiral, we're just more closed off and isolated, which doesn't really lead to feeling like our life is meaningful and that kind of satisfaction. And so that's something that I think is a great visual for people to carry throughout. But yeah, the rest of the book just kind of, it goes into, so after kind of choices and that sort of, well, what does Rebecca say about body kindness and sleep? And there's beautiful infographics throughout. Just, you might think of it like kind of how you can learn by looking at pictures, almost like a magazine.
Yeah, it's gorgeous. It's like
Thank
the
you.
prettiest book I've maybe ever seen.
Ooh, I like that.
Yeah.
I love the cover. It's very pearlized. And
Mhm.
that's what I really wanted, something that would be nice to hold. And hopefully, you know, not that every moment of reading body kindness or practicing body kindness, not that every moment is going to be enjoyable, because sometimes you got to get through some difficulty to open up your mind and to make a change. But that overall, my hope is that people feel that their life was better having read it, having done some of the exercises, and that overall, so, you know, this really was helpful in breaking away from diet culture and in being nice to myself and compassionate and learning to like myself. So I'll help people with setting goals. And of course, nothing has anything to do with weight loss and appearance. And in fact, I say, even if you're coming at this with, but I want to lose weight, I'm conflicted here, I say the best thing you can do is not set a weight loss goal at all, because it's just too distracting.
Yeah.
You got to do the work.
Right. And it keeps you in diet culture too. If you're setting a weight loss goal, it's telling yourself that you value weight loss and that that's a core and primary motivation for you. So I think if you can not do that and just sort of put it on the back burner to the best of your abilities and give yourself a chance to see all the reasons why health is its own reward other than weight loss.
Yep.
I think it builds on itself.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, even I've been grappling a lot with people with holding these conflicting emotions. And I know, heard come out, you know, the last several months, conversations around, well, can I be body positive and want to lose weight? And I think want is the most interesting word, because you can't 100% always control how you feel. And so I more or less see it as it's okay to hold this conflicting emotion. Like, gosh, I just can't shake this kind of part of me that has this desire here, but I can sit with that desire while I do this other work anyway. And that is what I would guide people toward, that it's okay to hold like these opposing interests or desires, but follow the path of body kindness, follow the path of being good to yourself, because that want changes over time, but you've got to kind of start walking through the process and doing the things that don't feel natural and easy right now in order for them to become more natural and more easy and like us now, giving the middle finger to diets and everything like that. We'll get there eventually.
Right. Yeah. That would not have been the case for me 10 years ago, 15 years ago. Like I was not here back then. So it's, when you think about 10 or 15 years of your life, that's a long time. That's a lot of work, a lot of time you have to put in to sort of change your thinking. And obviously for everyone, it takes a different amount of time, but it can be a really long road. So I think if you can commit to it and do the small things to help yourself feel better and kinder towards yourself. And yeah, even if that conflicting desire is there, like, but part of me still wants to lose weight, you can still end up much better off than you started even if you have that sort of lingering thought in your mind. Like I definitely went back to school in part because I wanted to lose weight. I was like, yeah, I'll help heal my own relationship with food, help other people get healthier and heal their relationships with food. And maybe I'll lose weight along the way too, because I'll finally get it,
Eating your carrots out of little Tupperware.
Right. That's totally the vision I had.
I know. And it just feels normal. It's so not normal,
Nope, it's not. Yeah. I think anyone who's in nutrition school and sees that around, and of course now too with like Instagram and wellness gurus that are sort of putting their food choices in everybody's face all the time. Like it's so hard to avoid. But again, I think that's why the power of boundaries and curating your social media is so important.
So important, because the other stuff, the helpful stuff is out there. And that's a great question. Is this helping or not? If you know it's not helpful, delete, move, cancel, go.
Right. Block, hide.
Exactly. So anyway, hashtag.
Yep. Exactly. Yeah. And same with conversations you have with family members or friends, right? You can move on with those little kind of phrases like, so anyway, or just have a subject change at the ready for when that kind of stuff comes up.
Yes. Yeah. Much, much needed, because not everybody's going to be in the same place as you. And not everybody, they might mean something to you, but they might not be ready to kind of hear what you have to say, or not everybody really matters to you. So they're not worth your effort. So it's great to have just an easy transition that helps you just move on, because you can't help everybody and save everybody. So I do think that's really important too, just to kind of have, it's a way of kind of helping guide yourself through potentially difficult situations that just aren't worth your effort. We also protect our own well-being too.
Right. Especially when we're in the process of changing and when we're struggling with this stuff on our own. It's like we can't be responsible for changing other people's minds too. And in fact, if we're sort of, our body positivity or body kindness is like a newly budding sort of little shoot, it could easily get crushed by somebody stomping on it with their body negativity, right? So we got to wait until we're like the strong tree and really rooted in it before we can stand our ground and fight back.
Yeah. And, something else that I was thinking about is that I am in no way saying, if you do body kindness, you will lose weight. I mean, I made it very clear that is the opposite. I mean, how can a book even begin? That's beside the point. But people do, if their body changes at all, that also becomes difficult, because now you feel like you identify with body respect and body positivity and fat acceptance and this wonderful movement. But then you've also changed your habits and have seen your body change. And now you're conflicted about, oh my gosh, am I doing something wrong now? And I totally get that and understand that. And I just keep taking it back to that weight has always been a very complicated and individual thing. So where people make those mistakes, in my opinion, is they suddenly give credit to the weight loss or promote that.
Right.
I'm going to journal that, as opposed to the fact of that changing your habits and your mindset and behavior, we've said several times, takes commitment and courage and dedication. Take that credit that you're part of diet culture, and that if you feel drawn to appreciate that that's not what deserves the adoration. But you don't have to feel guilty if you've done all this work and changed your habits and you've noticed changes in your body. And I do think that's important to say because I've seen it across the board, gain, loss, net neutral, and I do find I've seen it in chat rooms and just this sort of, how do I handle this situation? And I think you keep being body positive and you keep practicing all those beliefs you've had and be very aware that diet culture can suck you in at any moment and just stay away from the vortex, and you have to be very careful about your words and your choices, and that know that as a human being in diet culture, you might accidentally celebrate body changes that are now no longer helpful to body positivity and fat acceptance, and to someone who else is trying to get to a good place in their habits too. Guide yourself to, how can my words be helpful? And if you make it an acknowledgement that, with weight loss, I'm better, some sort of thing that no matter how helpful you're trying to be, it's not helpful. That's diet culture again.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Not to get sucked back into glorifying weight loss, even if your body's response to kindness is to lose weight, which again, some people's body, that might be the case. Some people's bodies gain weight from body kindness because they were restricting and suppressing their natural weight before. Some people just stay the same and maintain. So it's very case by case basis. But if you happen to be one of those people who does lose some weight from it, that is certainly a difficult position to be in. I've definitely seen that be, for some people, harder than if they had gained or maintained their weight, because they suddenly have all this feeling like there's all this pressure on them to either try to keep it up or channel it, like bottle it somehow and, make it happen more or whatever. They're getting sucked back into this diet culture thing of some weight loss is good, so how can I do more of it? Or just weight loss is good, period. And I've seen that even from professionals who work within an intuitive eating model and have gone through the journey themselves, who say, when I started finally eating intuitively and healed my relationship with food, I lost weight, and so can you, which it's like, that's the kind of messaging that diet culture applauds, because I've looked into writing books and what it takes to really sell books in this publishing climate, and also what a lot of editors at magazines, because my background is magazine journalism, what editors ask of me is often extremely focused on the benefits of weight loss and showing people through personal experience, see, this is what it takes to lose weight too. And it seems like most books that come out by dietitians and nutritionists have that focus of here's my personal experience or my 10-point plan of how to lose weight and keep it off. This is the way. This is my way that I've discovered is unique and special and going to change your life. So that's the kind of marketing that I think a lot of dietitians and nutritionists and health coaches get sucked into as well, because that seems to be what works, or that's what we're told is what works. This idea if you do this, you can lose weight. Here's this promise, and here's how I did it, and I have this unique experience to show you how to do it too. But the problem with that is that it's a fluke, really, that some people have lost weight on intuitive eating. So you might be in whatever random percentage of people do, but that's not helping anyone actually. Because even if your target market is the people who are going to lose weight with intuitive eating, they don't know that, and you don't know that going in. And so for any given individual, their outcome could be completely different. And then you've promised them this thing that is, demonizing the body they're in now, right? And sort of underlining this stigma that we have against larger bodies to begin with, because anytime weight loss is celebrated, that's what it does. It inherently says weight loss is good, ergo being at a larger body, in a larger body, or gaining weight or whatever is bad. So I think it's really important to be intentional about that stuff in your marketing.
It is. It's so twisted. Hearing intuitive eating being hijacked for weight loss, you might as well scratch your nails down a chalkboard. That's how it makes me feel. I know. I cannot. And Evelyn Tribole and Elise Resch will say, intuitive eating is not a diet. And it was even compared to dieting in the newspaper. And
I know.
People blog about intuitive eating. It's like, oh, you people do not get it at all. And yeah, it is just, it is a shame to apply an individual experience and just assume that it would work for everybody. And I think that I don't believe people who are actually saying eat intuitively and lose weight. I don't really know how much of the book they've actually read and absorbed.
Right.
/ did they actually do supervision under the co-authors? Because that will teach you so much more about it, because I know that they would make it clear, hey, this is what it is and isn't. And you've got to be able to, do what you think is best. And I think to your point about publishing and all this stuff, I think that too many people think, well, I've got to get ahead, or I've got to make a name for myself, or actually just, this is what I believe in, what I think is good for people. So that's how you get dietitians who are interested in all that stuff and promoting that. And even outside of publishing, because everyone's doing trainings and, you could find your diet du jour in a different form. It doesn't have to come in a printed book anymore. There's so many ways to spread that virus to everybody. I think there's part of that. And yes, absolutely. In the whole, I find myself very lucky to have a published book. I can tell you that I got a ton of no's for even initial meetings out of all the emails that were sent. And my agent forwarded me every response. And most of them were very, very positive about the writing. And they basically said, but we only sell diet books. And so no.
Oh, God.
Yeah. And so I got a few meetings. So I got 3 meetings. I got 2 offers. And then, so basically with 2 offers, I know I was getting published. So that was all I cared about. And I am super, super grateful to my publisher, Workman. They're still family owned, and they definitely work like a family. The original book idea wasn't even called Body Kindness. It was something different. And that's a whole separate story, but suffice it to say that they are the kind of publisher that heard me when I realized that it wasn't a diet drivel book, but it wasn't what needed to get written. And when I came at them with something else, literally 3/4 of the way through the process, they said, we're going to trust you that we can crank this out. And without them, there would be no Body Kindness. And I know that it is going to help. It helped me. It's been helping my clients. I know it's going to help people. But by and large, the publishing world is, you have to have a huge fan base, or I don't know, be Brene Brown or something. But but there's very little room for rational, practical advice. It doesn't mean to give up, but you're absolutely right, because you would make an amazing author. So don't give up on that in finding your way of figuring it out. It's just something to just not give up on, because we need more of these types of books. Build as big a pie as we can out of anti-diet books.
Yes. And everybody gets a piece of the pie.
Yes, exactly. Totally. We all get to eat.
Woohoo. I know. Yeah. Well, thank you. That's a really nice vote of confidence, because since before I could even write, like when I was 3, I was dictating books to my mom, and I always wanted to be a writer. That's been in my DNA. And it's been just so demoralizing in some ways to see. I've had one proposal go out and get rejected, and I'm back to the drawing board and just sort of like, can I really do this? And it's a slog and it's a lot of work, but I do love traditional publishing as much as it's sort of a dinosaur. And I think books like yours really inspire me, because they show that there actually is a market for this kind of stuff. And your book is gorgeous. Like, it's really, I know I said this, like, I will just sing the praises. The content is amazing too. It's not just, it's like the whole package, but I feel like it shows that the publisher was willing to invest, to do this colorful, beautifully designed. It feels good to hold. It's just like the sensory experience of it is so great. And I feel like they don't make books like that anymore so much. It's oftentimes books will go straight to kind of crappy paperback or so. Yeah, the fact that, to see a traditional publishing house is still willing to invest in this kind of book. And like, that really warms my heart too, to hear that they were willing to change courses with you and do what you felt was really authentic. And it is like, it shines through in the book, how I just feel like so confident giving this book to clients and recommending it to people, because it's fully health at every size and intuitive eating infused through and through. So I love it. And I appreciate your support as well. One day I will have a book to.
You will. There you go. We're going to manifest it right here.
Yes.
We started the manifestation and just keep going because it will happen, and you just got to kind of let all the things unfold and it will eventually happen.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. I'm going to put your book on my vision board.
There you go.
My first vision board. Oh, I love it. Well, Rebecca, we're almost at the end of our time, but tell us where people can find you and find your book and learn more about your practice.
Sure. So go to bodykindnessbook.com. There's some great there's a get started section. And when you click on that, there's a free digital training that you could take. It's a 5 health rules to break. And that comes with a self-reflection guide. And at least for a limited time, you're going to get a free chapter of the book, which is nice. Yes. And as well as one of my clients' favorite tools, which is my health and happiness journal. So it's a way to mindfully observe and track things where there's no room for how many grams of carbs was in this. It's just general things that are important to track about mind, body, mood that my clients have just helped me refine and love. So all that is just free for you to get started. And certainly the book is available wherever books are sold and ebooks. And I appreciate any purchases.
Yeah. Well, I'll put the link in the show notes for people to get it directly from this episode. So everybody should go out and order that now, ASAP. So thank you so much, Rebecca. Really a pleasure talking with you.
Thank you for having me.
So that's our show. Thanks again so much to our guests for being here and to you guys for listening. And we'll be back again next week with another brand new episode. Meanwhile, I'd love to stay in touch. And the best way to do that is via email. So you can go to christyharrison.com/email to sign up for my VIP list. I'll send you info about new episodes of the podcast as they drop, as well as exclusive sneak previews of new episodes, exclusive giveaways and other special deals on the products and services I offer, special tips on how to make peace with food and learn to trust your body, and a whole lot more. Sign up at christyharrison.com/email. You can also subscribe via iTunes and leave us a nice rating and review, which is a great way to get the word out about the podcast and help other people find these important messages. Just go to iTunes from your computer or your podcasts app, type in Food Psych to the search bar, click on the result that comes up under podcasts, and then click on ratings and reviews, and you can leave a rating and review right there. And I really appreciate all the 5-star reviews and wonderful ratings that we've gotten because it's helped us climb really high right now in the rankings. So we're currently in the top 50 of all health podcasts, and that's really cool because we're competing against some of the diet mentality, sort of traditional weight management and body shaming types of messages that I'm trying to fight with this podcast. So we've really started to beat out a lot of the diety voices, and I'd love to continue climbing higher in the rankings to get this message out even further. So please leave us a nice rating and review. It's so very much appreciated. And thanks to everyone who's left reviews so far. The music you're hearing behind me now is by a band called AWOL, and the track is called Food, used under the Creative Commons license. Thanks so much for listening, and until next time, stay psyched.
Stupid or scared, no work in the kitchen now. Who put you there in that perfect position now? Bullies want your food, and you ain't really beat. Have you ever went over your friend's house to eat?